Welcome to the Omega Metroid podcast. My name is Andy Spiteri, joined by Dakota Lasky. We got another Red Eye recording tonight, Dak, but I am excited to be venturing back into the world of Inspired by Metroid. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm not gonna lie. I don't know about you. I personally love this time of recording. I feel like I just got back from my acting. Well, I guess my acting class is ending soon, so I guess it won't end up being convenient. But I walk right in, I just sit right down and get right to it. I still have my shoes on. I'm still up and ready. Like I didn't kind of, simmer down for the night and then I have to power back up to record. You know what I'm saying? I'm still up and ready to go. So I don't know. I'm sure we won't make it a thing, but I'm just saying it is the red eye, but I feel a lot more, energized and refreshed. Maybe not refreshed, but more energized than I would going on a red eye. That said, I'm doing pretty good, man. How you doing?
I'm not doing too bad. I have a question for you.
Okay.
Can you hear any ruckus on my end?
Ruckus?
I'm not sure if you'll be able to hear that or not.
No,
if any of our listeners will be able to hear that. But so I like recording this time too. But the one downfall of recording this time. So my wife and I just went out for dinner, and we don't really do this a lot because we have our puppy locked up during the day when we're at work. But my wife is off on Mondays, so we went out for dinner and we locked him up while we went out. But now that he's out, we just got back in about 20 minutes ago, and he's upstairs stampede wrestling, jumping off the couch, and I don't even know what he's doing. So I like this too, this time of night recording, and I'm just kind of chuckling, listening to my dog go nuts upstairs. Puts a smile on my face.
Yeah, I feel like my cat does a similar thing where he'll come out as I come home, and then I don't know, a few minutes later, I don't know if you've ever heard it, but it's happened a couple times when I've recorded the show. He will run full speed and put his entire weight and jump at the door and throw his body at the door in order to open up my bedroom. But he doesn't want to come in. He just wants the option.
He wants the door to be open.
He wants the door to be open, exactly. He wants the option if he so chooses at some point to enter. So he'll just open the door and full speed and ram into it. I'm like, what would I sometimes I check on my roommate, you okay? I end up finding out it's my cat bombarding my door and then running off and just messing with me. So he's on that floor.
I have Zora does the same thing all the time. I leave the door open when in my studio, just a sliver, so that she can slink in if she wants to. And sometimes whenever I record on stream, I swear to God she knows that, because she'll know. Pop by and her little tail's all the way up. She's like, hey, what's up?
Yeah, definitely. They're very interested if you are doing something. They're like, oh, you're interested in this? Well, I'm going to be interested in this. But same thing happens with food too. All the time.
Yeah, definitely. I feel that. All right. Well, we're going to get to some Axiom Verge 2 here. But actually, I guess we should mention too that we got the Game Awards here in just a couple days now.
Wow.
2 days away by the time that you guys will be listening to this. Metroid Dread is, of course, up for Game of the Year, and I believe that it's made it into the second round of fan voting for Fan Game of the Year, too, so you can vote for that over on the Game Awards website. Did you, we've never really dipped into this here on this show, but were you kind of following Jeff Keighley's tweet about Activision earlier this week? Or I guess it was yesterday, that got a lot of, let's say, backlash? Well, are you kind of up to speed on that whole situation?
From my understanding was, and of course I start off and I kind of forget how it started, but didn't he not say anything about the recent Activision stuff, and then it was found out that there's still some, Activision people on the board, so then he was like, Activision won't be involved in the show, and then other people are like, well, if we're gonna crap on him for being involved with Activision, what about Riot and this company and that company and EA and whatnot? Then there was a back and forth with that. So I think I've kind of followed along. I think that's the gist of it. I don't know. Am I wrong? Am I off?
No, not necessarily. I saw a Kotaku article where they were quoting Jeff Keighley, and he said the Game Awards will essentially remain neutral about whether it chooses to highlight or have Activision games up for nominations, basically. and a lot of people thought that that was like a really weak response because like a few years ago he went like full on kamikaze towards Konami for basically not letting Kojima come to the Game Awards right before they had their breakup.
Right.
So it was kind of like this, like it's like really like we've seen you take a stand before against studios that were up to some shady business, and like I feel like Activision is really, that's a real ugly story. So he did come out later and kind of clarify that there would be no Activision presence beyond the nominations that it already has. But I like it. It did kind of spiral out. There were some members of Activision still on the board of the Game Awards. So I feel like I read all that Blizzard and Activision stuff, and it just left a foul taste in my mouth. I don't necessarily play a lot of their games anyways, so it's not like I was gonna boycott anything like that or whatever, because they're just not like the games for me. But yeah, I don't know. It was kind of a weak response, and like I was feeling a little bit guilty actually about watching the Game Awards, even though I was excited to see how Metroid would do. But he did make that tweet saying that they weren't going to have a presence. Activision wasn't going to have a presence, so I feel a little bit better about it. But yeah, I mean, it just kind of stuck out to me as a little kind of a downer on this week. As excited as I am for the Game Awards.
Yeah, I mean, I do think it is an interesting point how he went to the lengths for like Kojima, but which I mean, I'm sure was a very valid cause and whatnot. But then there's some like legitimate like bad stuff happening in the industry, right? And that's like such a like I could put that in way better words, but for the sake of the show, that's how I'll put it. And there's kind of no response in that way. I can see where people are coming from in that manner, and I don't know. I would say I don't have a fully prepared response into this issue, but I can definitely see how. And I agree. I feel like at the end of the day, to not have a response is like to be neutral, still having like picking a side, right? Like you're still,
of course. Yeah.
So I think that is a significant thing that should absolutely be spoken about and discussed. So, I mean, there's always some kind of there's nothing goes smoothly, right? Like, and at the end of the day, I kind of even like you mentioned the Game Awards are a couple days away. I was like, oh yeah, you're right. I never anticipate the Game Awards, so, but I did see some of that talk happen over the weekend, and you're right, it did start from a Kotaku article, which I completely forgot about, but once you said it, I was like, oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Not surprised.
All right. Well, yeah, it's kind of a little bit of a dark note or a dank note.
Yeah.
And like you said, there's some like evil stuff going on in those corporations.
Yeah, it's like a bad reminder, but at the same time, I also think it's important to like make sure this stuff doesn't kind of like fall by the wayside. Some like legitimately some people's lives were like completely ruined and were treated horribly and so on, and to be like, oh well, but also the Game Awards, and we're gonna kind of just have fun with games. Like I can understand how people want to just kind of shut that first part off and just enjoy games, but at the same time, I don't think you can separate those two things. You can't. I
agree. I have a real hard time looking at Call of Duty and being like, wow, I really want to go and support this franchise right now.
Well, let's be fair, Andy. You're not going to play Call of Duty regardless of who's making it. But
well, I mean, I wasn't.
But I mean, you can't have the games without the people who make them, right? From the whoever funds it at the top to the actual people who are doing the work, all the way down the line. So it is important to talk about these issues and not let them be kind of pushed to the wayside for the sake of fanfare or whatever, with the Game Awards and all that. And I think, to not have kind of a stance on it and with such a big platform is a pretty big deal. So I'm not surprised it kind of went down the way it did. But it is nice, that all said, to, I guess, in a bright thing for us to see. Metroid Dread's doing well. And I feel like you can your conscience will be fine, Andy, by watching the Game Awards. Maybe your dignity, not so much, but I think you should be guilt-free watching the Game Awards.
The Game Awards the last couple of years has been a real drag. I'm not going to lie. Especially last year, because they had the Sephiroth reveal in the first 5 minutes, which was the first 5 minutes that I missed. And
that was
the
great.
Rest of the show was just
that was perfect.
Nothing. Yeah,
I
got
to
was
watch
awesome.
The first 5 minutes, and then I turned it off. It was awesome.
Yeah, well,
it make me watch
I was
the whole
reporting
thing.
on it, and the rest of the show was awful. And I was watching it because I was like, we were waiting to see if there was going to be Breath of the Wild 2 news. And guess what? Guess what I'm doing in 2021? Watching the Game Awards to see if there's going to be Breath of the Wild 2 news.
Do you think there's going to be Breath of the Wild 2 news, and you think there's going to be Metroid Prime HD news? Or Metroid Prime 4? What do we get? I think
Metroid Prime HD is more likely. Of the three options that you just listed, I think that's the most likely. I think
it's happening. I'm on the side now of it's happening. Metroid Prime HD, I think, is happening at the Game Awards. I'm calling it right now. Right here.
Well, we're not going to have to wait long to find out. But yeah, we're we haven't really talked about that issue here on the show, but I hope that it's obvious that we're with all the developers over that those studios that have put up with so much and all of that. And I hope that the Game Awards in the future is a little bit more conscious of this kind of stuff. Because it's not a good situation, but what is going to be a good situation, I feel like. By the way, actually, before we move on, I should say the new computer I bought could play Call of Duty.
Wow.
But won't.
It won't. Why not?
Because it's mouse and keyboard, which is the worst way to play a video game. We all know that.
Oh, this guy. I can hear your dog barking at just the
I was just about to say, I think my dog agrees with me.
No, I don't think that's agreeing. You might be misinterpreting your dog's barks here, my guy. But
maybe I'll ask him after the show.
Come play Halo. Play Halo. The new campaign's getting some good reviews, which I'm excited about. So, we can't play together because there's no co-op at launch. Oh, sorry. We can play it. We can both play it separately and then talk about our experience. How about that?
You know what? I would be willing to. It's free to play, right?
The multiplayer is not the campaign.
Well, I'd be willing to download the multiplayer. You know what? I'm gonna get an Xbox. Series
Are you actually
X.
gonna play Halo with me, man?
Yeah, I'm not gonna get it right away. I'm not gonna get an Xbox right away. And truth be told, I'd get a PS5 before I get
it on
Xbox.
PC.
No, I mean that's no.
What do you mean no? What do you mean no? You can plug a controller in. What's the difference?
No.
What's the difference? What is the difference? What is the difference between an Xbox and going on your PC and plugging in an Xbox controller? What's the difference?
Man, I'm on my comfy couch. I got a bowl of Doritos beside me. I've got my controller.
You can't have a bowl of Doritos at your desk? You can't have a comfy chair at your desk?
It's just not the same. It's not the same, Dak.
I guess so. If you want to sit like a billion feet from your couch and can't see anything. One hand on cheesy chips. Anyway.
No, they're greasy too.
Are they? Doritos aren't greasy.
Well,
they're cheesy and
I feel like
powdery.
All chips
they're
are greasy to an extent. No, more cheesy than greasy.
Some are definitely greasy. But not Doritos are not greasy. I take that back, and they're not. They're not. They're okay.
We have
so
fallen
Axiom
right
Verge
off the rails.
2. Please segue this so we can talk about this game, which I actually was happy to play.
Okay, I don't know that there is a good segue, so I'm just going to do the hard switch here.
Okay.
So here we go.
Let's do it.
We're back with my dog is barking. He's like, man, you can't do that.
Start the show.
Yeah, get on with it. All right, we're doing Inspired by Metroid, and I was and am very excited to talk about this. I was looking forward to this game for a long, long, long time. Axiom Verge 2, developed by Tom Happ and releasing earlier this year after what felt like forever. It got delayed by like a full calendar year, I want to say, but it finally came out, and I have some thoughts on it. And I guess I should preface this with, I think that of every Inspired by Metroid title that we've covered so far, Axiom Verge is my favorite. I really, really, really like that game, and I like it in a Metroid way, if that makes sense. Like I really love Hollow Knight and I love Ori, but those feel like very different and like their own entities to me. Whereas like Axiom Verge felt like a Metroid game,
Yes.
But just not. So like it was my favorite Inspired by Metroid in that kind of sense. So I was really, really looking forward to Axiom Verge 2. And I have a statement that I want to make right off the top here, Dak, but maybe I want to let you go first, because actually you were a little bit more your initial impression when we were talking before the show started wasn't actually what I was expecting. So
Really?
maybe just give us the quick version of your thoughts so
Well,
far.
the thing is that you've finished the game, right? Okay,
Yes.
I haven't finished the game. I want to say I'm halfway through. If I'm not halfway through, then I'd have to be at least a third of the way through the game. I've fought a few bosses and gotten to a few areas. I feel like I'm pretty far into the game. Um, but I'll admit that I haven't gotten to the part of the game where I know is like really crazy, or I would assume is crazy because I haven't really spoiled myself. And you can feel free to spoil because I don't care. I'll probably forget. But like with Axiom Verge, for example, it's like pretty crazy right off the bat. I think this game kind of eases you into the craziness a little bit, and I'm still kind of. I could be wrong. Maybe the rest of the game is pretty tame too. But yeah, I actually really enjoyed this game. So far, I am enjoying it a lot from what I've played. You're right. It does feel like a Metroid game. And I think that's kind of why I'm enjoying it a lot because I wasn't sure after I played Metroid Dread. I'm like, do I just like Metroid games or do I actually like Metroidvania games? Like, am I a fan of the genre? Or am I just a fan of this story, this franchise? And maybe that's why, Dread let me down a lot or, because it had a lot of meaning to me in terms of it specifically being Metroid and not just necessarily being the gameplay. So when I played this game, I was like, am I going to enjoy this or am I just be like, maybe it's just Metro that does it for me? And I actually really found myself like getting hooked on the gameplay because it just felt like that kind of simple Metroid formula, but then built in the natural way that you would expect. But I really liked the little differences that were thrown in from a normal Metroid game and how the game progresses in the context of the story and the new character or the character you're working with. I guess it is a new character too. New for me and new for the series, technically. It's new for everyone. But yeah, I mean, I think the game is fun. I am enjoying it a lot. The music is incredible. I love the music. The areas are really cool. I like the setup of the story. I have some gripes with how the story is told, though, which I feel like I had similar gripes from the original game. But the gameplay, I think, is really clean. Like, it's very well executed. I don't have any gripes about the gameplay so far. And in fact, one thing I popped off for was there's a area at the near the beginning of the game where like you go into water for like a brief moment. I'm like, oh no, slow water gameplay. And then like almost immediately you get like the upgrade to move normally in water. I was like, oh, this game gets me. I'm enjoying this. This is good. So yeah, I'm actually having a lot of fun with the game. And I remember, I've been hooked on Destiny for a bunch lately, and I've been like, any game that pulls me away from Destiny is, I don't want to play it. And I was even like groaning about like, I don't really want to play it. And I just kind of was like, I'm going to play it, obviously. And jumped in and found myself being like, damn, I don't have enough time to finish this now before the show. I'm really enjoying this, and I want to keep playing it and get to the end. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. First impression.
Okay. Yeah. I was surprised to hear you say that, but I think that maybe I shouldn't have been because I think it's fair to say I like Axiom Verge, the first game, a lot more than you do. Because I think that you liked it, but I like really liked it, and I was really, really looking forward to Axiom Verge too. And I agree with you. I think that the game is really, really fun. However, the first thing that I wrote down when I was kind of using our definitive ranking criteria from the Metroid games when I was looking at this, and I was looking at Axiom Verge 2 compared to Axiom Verge 1, and the first thing I wrote down was like, still a fun game, worse than Axiom Verge 1 in every conceivable way.
Really?
And I think that is how I feel. And that sounds really harsh, and like to an extent it is, but like if I thought that like Axiom Verge 1 was like a bunch of 9 or 8 out of 10s, then I think that Axiom Verge 2 is like a bunch of 8 to 7 out of 10s. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't think it reaches the same level. But like on the other hand, Tom Happ, when he was making this game, he said a bunch of times over and over again that like it would have been really easy for me to do like just a new map for Axiom Verge 2, but he wanted to go a different route. And I really respect that, because this is, the gameplay is similar, but a lot different than Axiom Verge 1. So I do respect him for doing that. I'm not sure that it landed all of the time, which we'll get into, but I do respect the effort, and I and it's kind of like a lose-lose situation because I'm kind of wondering to myself, like, all right, well, if he had just kind of made a new map and kept the gameplay mostly the same, you're playing as Trace, you've got the guns, and you have kind of the same similar style bosses, like, would it be, would it be better than Axiom Verge 1 then? I don't think it would be. So I kind of I do respect him for taking that different approach for it, if that makes sense. So I'm kind of dumping on it, but trying to build it up at the same time.
I mean, I don't remember, like, because I only really played Axiom Verge, really once for the show, and maybe a little bit more than that. I feel like I'm enjoying this game more than I enjoyed that game when I first played it, because from what I remember of Axiom Verge, it was like Weapons the game. Like, it just was like a 2D like Metroidvania kind of game, but like you had all these crazy guns and weapons, right? And like that was kind of the hook, I guess, where just you had all these weapons that had crazy effects and had like different properties and all that. And in this game, I felt like I had a lot more like less weapons, I guess, but a lot more in terms of like things I could do with my character and more like freedom on the map itself, I guess, if that makes sense. And maybe I'm just misremembering how Axiom Verge feels, but I never felt like I had like the freedom and kind of crisp gameplay that I feel like I have from Axiom Verge 2. Whereas Axiom Verge 2 doesn't have like the crazy, or maybe I haven't gotten to that part of the game yet, but it doesn't have like all the crazy repertoire of like obscure and abstract weapons that Axiom Verge has. So I don't know. I think how the game evolved feels really good for a Metroid game, or like a Metroidvania game. It might not like scratch that same itch that the first game did, but I'm still having a lot of fun with it in comparison.
Yeah, and I think that that's fair. Like the first game, I thought that the first game was like a nice mix of combat and exploration. And I guess I have a couple different areas I want to talk about in this game, but I guess we'll just start with the gameplay here. I think that the scale totally tipped to the exploration side versus the combat side, which is actually funny because usually I feel like I would like that, but like the combat in this game is just like so dreadful. I feel like that
Really?
it kind of, like, for example, like every single boss that you fight, first of all, there basically are no bosses. I think that there's like 3 bosses in this game, but like you can't lose. You just respawn, you respawn, you respawn. So like there's no challenge, and because there's no challenge, there's no reward for completing it. And I feel like that's a problem that kind of permeates throughout the entire experience, because like, some of the boss battles I thought in Axiom Verge 1 were very creative and very like, they were just fun, good old fashioned like Metroid boss battle. Like you had that one boss that was basically Kraid. I had a lot of fun with that. Whereas this one, like they look spectacular, but they're not. There's nothing to them really. It's just you can die as many times as you want, and I feel like I kind of do miss the weapon variety from Axiom Verge 1. And, you didn't use a lot of the guns that you ended up getting. I think that I used like 3 of those guns on the regular, but it was cool to have the options. Whereas this game, I feel like you have a pickaxe, which is kind of just like, eh. You have a boomerang, and it's just kind of like, eh. These are okay. Like, you eventually can like get like kind of a cool sword, and you can get a better boomerang and stuff like that. But I guess I just kind of missed like the gun gameplay, or like I never got like what I was just like, all right, this sword is badass. Like I finally, like, now I've got the the ultimate weapon in this game. I don't think that it ever quite reaches that. So I was left a little bit wanting with the way that combat was implemented in this game.
See, now I'm kind of thrown off. I have no idea how far I am into the game because I feel like I've fought 4 bosses in the game, and I have not, and I'm like halfway through it, right? So I would assume there's more than 4 because I've fought 4 bosses and I'm not done with the game. So maybe you just missed some, but there is kind of like a thing in this game where like the bosses are kind of just out on the field on the map, and they don't have like you can just free roam around them. But I kind of like that. I liked how it wasn't like a standard, all right, you walk into this room and it's the boss room and it does a little animation and then you fight it. Like, in this game is very video gamey in other ways, but in that way it felt more natural. Like the the bosses are just kind of like organically in the area, and you can go around them if you want. Like there's one boss in the beginning that the big like I don't know snake boss or whatever that it follows you through like those green tunnels, and you knock off the spikes to like deal damage to it. Like first you just kind of like avoid. I think almost a couple of the bosses at the beginning I kind of avoided at first and went around them until I felt I was ready to take them on. And I thought those bosses were really cool. Like they weren't traditional bosses, but they were fun because I felt like my options were limited, so I had to be smarter and not get hit by stuff. And the hacking mechanic is really cool. I think that really adds some depth to the boss fights and fights in general because you can go and kind of like brute force it and just attack stuff, or you can try to get in close, get the hack off, and then you spend your points how you want to depending on how you want to fight a boss. Like there's one of them, I don't know, it's like one of the early bosses. It was like a cow with like wings and whatnot, like a big ship drone looking thing, and it was cool. I thought because you could either hack its like different projectiles to slow them down and like avoid them, and you could also hack its guns so that way they always point down instead of being able to aim at you, and that would take a good amount of points. And then another strategy I just tried was just overloading its cannons and just having it dealing it like mad damage at the beginning, but then having to deal with all its weaponry as it was at low health. So like you could like go into it in different ways, and I thought that was really fun because that also tied into how you built your character with the different skill points. You could build a character that was maybe high in hack radius and health and stuff, so you'd get the hacks off easier, and then you wouldn't have to go in so deep to take down a boss as quickly. So stuff like that, I think, all really played, like those systems played together really nicely and made up for like, oh, I just have a weapon that does something really cool. It's all in one package and I use that. You kind of had to use the different things about your character and the environment and the skill system and the hack system and all that together in different combinations to approach, encounters differently, which I thought was really fun.
I don't disagree, but I did a quick look here. So we got 11 bosses in Axiom Verge 1, and we got 5 bosses in Axiom Verge 2.
Really?
And 2 of them are optional. So like I was left a little bit wanting, but I do think that you brought up something which I think that this game does really well, which is expanding on the hacking of last game. Last game you had like the glitch gun, which could change the properties of different enemies.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really cool mechanic because it could influence the world as well. But in this game, they actually take it to like the next level, and like you can hack different enemies with different ways depending on how much. I guess depending on what your hacking level is, for lack of a better word, you can upgrade your hacking. I think they call it psychology or something like that in this game.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can basically upgrade your hacking power, and you can convert different enemies to, like you said, either shoot you slower, or some of them you can actually get to like overheat and explode on themselves, which is very satisfying. So that's probably the most satisfying thing about combat. But then even then, I was like, I don't know. I guess I felt like it just didn't have like a lot of momentum, because even when you were hacking, you kind of had to stop and like hack, and then the boss would change properties. So I thought the combat was an area that was a little bit weak in this game. And you mentioned something earlier that I wanted to talk about, because I actually used this word like a ton when I was writing down my thoughts for Axiom Verge 2. Like, you mentioned the word video gamey, and like, man, like it really, I think that Tom Happ changed the graphical presentation like slightly for the main world from Axiom Verge 1 to Axiom Verge 2, where like Axiom Verge 2 to me seems a little bit more like pixelated, but like bigger pixels, so like it doesn't look as sharp as Axiom Verge 1. But then when you go into the Breach, it looks like an NES game a lot of the times, and it's like very like video gamey. I don't know how else to describe it, and that can be fine. Like I don't mind that at all, really. But like it kind of, there are points where it just like it kind of beats you over your head, and like when you're trying to tell this cool story about this alien planet and all these like giant robots, and then you're in like this NES style world, to me it was just kind of like threw me for a loop a little bit.
I agree.
And I'm not necessarily poo-pooing on that because I thought that the Breach was really cool, as we'll talk about here, but the aesthetic of it was a little bit, yeah, just like video gamey. It was very, even the opening music when you open the menu, it's like this
Yeah.
triumphant theme that you would expect to hear on like an arcade back in 1986.
It's definitely one of those things where it's like a retro game that's like always in your face, like, hey, you're playing a retro game. It's a retro game.
Yeah.
We're doing the retro game thing. And it's like constantly, yeah, like beating you over the head with it, which, I'll forgive like the menu because that's kind of like, all right, like at the end of the day, you are playing a video game. So if it's like on the menu, that's fine. But like when you're in the game itself, even when you're not in the breach yet, there are like sound effects and certain like tracks that just feel so like chiptune, and it just kind of, it's like very reminder, like it kind of kills some of the immersion. The breach itself being very like 8-bitty and whatnot, like that I thought was a cool aesthetic choice and just like a nice stylistic kind of choice for the game because it's already kind of committed to being video gamey, so I guess that was fine. But one thing that really took me out, and we can kind of, I guess, maybe go into this a bit more later, but the presentation of the story felt very video gamey to me as well. Like, especially towards the beginning, where it just didn't feel like anything had any weight to it. I want to say I had this same issue with Axiom Verge 1, where a very dire situation is happening, and everyone's like talking so nonchalantly, like almost as if they're aware that it's a video game, that they know the stakes aren't high because it's like, well, okay, it's not real, right? Like there's a couple of things of dialogue actually with a character called, I think, Kyla or whatever, that you meet in that mountain area towards the beginning of the game, and like where you meet the guy who was working on the portal or something.
Right.
And you have like you go and talk to the portal guy, what is Warren, and he's like, "Hey, what's up? I'm the site manager." I'm like, "Dude, you're in like another dimension that you like fell through a portal from Antarctica into this like weird space, and all these drones are going crazy, and someone comes up to you and you're like, "Hey, what's up? I'm the site manager." Like you work at like Home Depot. Where are the stakes? Where's the urgency, And then you go talk to the person Kira outside, and she's like, "Yeah, it's it's hard being lonely out here," as they like stand on this like just chilling. I'm like, this is a crazy situation. Like no one's reacting. Like this is crazy. What's happening? The same thing happened in the first game, I think, where like the main guy like was so nonchalant as he was had no reaction to like anything around him, and it just makes it so. I don't need it to be melodramatic, but I need some kind of like visceral or reaction sometimes, or like some kind of like something to make it feel like and really sell that this is like a dire situation that they're in. Like she goes up and talks to this Kira person. They're like, "Yeah, it sucks being lonely out here," and the main character, what's her name? Indra, right? Yeah, which I hate that I forgot because that's one of the characters' names from the 100, and that's why when I saw this character's name was Indra, I was like, oh yeah, I know that name. But anyway, Indra responds, she's like, well, it's important to stay, be able to show you're independent out here. I'm like, what is this? Like, this isn't therapy. This is a crazy situation. You are in another dimension. Like the conversations you should be having should not be normal conversations. They should be different. There should be some weight to them. And every character is talking so nonchalantly, it like takes me out because I'm like, oh, okay. Like I don't know how to emote or react because the tone isn't being set. I don't know what the tone's supposed to be. I need to be told that. Tell me the story and show me the story. And the tone is so inconsistent. It takes me out of it.
That's fair. The story, like, it's so weird. I think it's even more weird than the first game, where like for me, I really enjoyed Axiom Verge 1 for the gameplay very specifically, but like I thought that the story was cool enough, and like you had the story was simple enough. You had Trace, and you were trying to stop this dark Athetos guy, and you find out at the end of the game that Trace may or may not in fact become Athetos, and like you're in this other world. Whereas I feel like there's a lot more parts going on in this game. You're playing as Indra. She's looking for her daughter, but they don't really sell you on that relationship.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know what? Fine. She's looking for her daughter, and like that's how we get there. But then like I don't think that you literally hear anything from her daughter. I could be wrong, but like I feel like they don't really build up that relationship very much. Most of the optional text that you find in this game highlights kind of the history and the war between the arms and the other species on the planet. and a lot of it's just kind of like the same sci-fi mumbo jumbo from the first game, but like even more complicated. Where like I feel like they probably could have sold that, you know, relationship between Indra and her daughter a little bit more. And to your point, like she dies like instantly in the game, like she's dead.
Okay.
And then furthermore, like I mean, she drowns in the opening scene in the game. So like, and she kind of no sells it. She's just like, all right, well, I'm in another dimension. I thought I died, but then further in the game, she dies again, and she's stuck in the body of a drone after her arm turns on her, and she doesn't really sell that either. So yeah, it was.
Yeah,
You
there's
know,
no
the
selling
story
of it.
was.
You need to sell the audience on what's happening. If the character, like, you can't just have the characters say the lines. They gotta have some,
Yeah,
you know, ebb and flow to it. Yeah, the daughter thing I thought was weird too, because maybe I forgot, or I was misunderstanding, but my understanding was that she went to Antarctica because her the people that she, like, her company was doing research down there, and they all disappeared, right? Like, isn't that why she went down there originally? I thought that's the original reason she went down there. And then at the end of that scroll, they were like, oh yeah, by the way, her daughter's missing. And like, it comes like, it's so abruptly thrown in there. I'm like, oh, okay, that's whatever. But I did like the setup of the story. I thought that was interesting because, correct me if I'm wrong, the protagonist from Axiom Verge is just some guy, right? Like, he's just a dude.
Well, when we meet him, he's some guy.
Right, yeah, yes.
It's heavily implied that he turns into the villain of that game, Athos.
Yeah, but the setup of the game is, you know, he's just some dude. I thought it was interesting in this game how it's not just some person. It was like the CEO of a company. And like, I thought that was interesting because that's normally not like a tropey kind of character, right? Like, that's not a very underdoggy kind of root for kind of character. That's a character you usually don't root for. So I thought that was interesting, kind of, you know, having this character go down there and constantly being reminded through like those journal entries, like, oh, hey, by the way, like, this CEO of this company like made record profits and laid off all these people, and this person died and whatever, and all this stuff and all this bad stuff.
You know, I think you're right. Like, they actually don't really go out of your way to encourage you to root for Indra.
No, they don't. Which
is neat,
yeah.
But maybe kind of a problem as well.
I can understand that, but I thought it was an interesting way to kind of, you know, tell a story, I guess, because it's not a character you would expect, and it's a character that immediately like faces conflict, right? They're not just some person and you have to come up with like some convoluted way to like have them be important or whatever, right? Like, they already come into the story with some kind of importance, some kind of limitations and some expectations, and then those change and are challenged immediately. So I thought that was a really cool thing. And because when the game started immediately, I was like, oh, it's a CEO, I'm going to hate this person. But then, like, I didn't necessarily hate this person, though at the same time, I was kind of curious as to how they would make her kind of, I guess, relatable, right? And I would say for the most part, they do a good job of, or maybe not relatable, but somewhat sympathetic. And I also think it works to the advantage of like how the game introduces the different like gadgets you get and whatnot. Because when you like first start the game out, I mean, your upgrades are like, climb this wall. Now you can throw, you know, like very basic stuff.
You can jump higher.
Yeah. And I think the reason why like that doesn't really work for me in like Metroid Dread or like Metroid games anymore, because like Samus is such like a well-defined character and she's innately very strong, right? Like when you play Metroid Prime, you know, that game's great, but like you feel like you should be able to do more, you know, like she's very slow and tanky. But then like in Dread, they've really, you know, she's grown into that character that we've expected, right? Like the Samus we expect, because she's a crazy space warrior with, you know, modified DNA, whatever, and like a crazy power suit. She should be able to at least slide, you know, like she should be able to do a lot of acrobatic stuff. Whereas this person is just a, you know, not a regular person socially, but physically is just a regular person starting out, right? Maybe later in the story that's not true, but the setup of the game, it's just a regular person. So to be able to get the ability to climb a wall, you know, free-handed, right, is a pretty big thing, right? For the average person to do. So I think that kind of helped alleviate some of my issues with that kind of stuff. In this case, I didn't have the same expectations because they introduced a character that was both interesting, but also, you know, it would make sense, you know, authentically for them to start out with those kind of lower level, simpler kind of abilities because they're just an average person. So I like that kind of setup of the game. I'm that's part of why I think I want to keep seeing how it goes, because so far it's kind of, aside from some presentation things and the lack of reaction in some ways, I'm interested in the story so far.
Yeah, I think that this game has like a cool story, except for the daughter part. I thought
Yeah,
that was kind of
yeah,
a little bit lame. But like when you get Indra and you meet these arms, and like you kind of learn of all the like the different arms or whatever that were in this war against the machines or whatever. It is kind of an interesting story, but I feel like it's not told in a way that
yeah.
is very like digestible. It's kind of like that scene in the Matrix Reloaded where you meet the guy in the with all the TVs around him, and he's telling you like about the history of the Matrix, and like it's really cool what he's saying, but the way that he delivers it is you're just like, what is he saying? Like this doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of feel like that way with this story too. And like I feel like there's a time when like you want to be cryptic with your story, and then there's a time where like you just like say like this is what's going on. And I feel like Axiom Verge doesn't always nail that kind of balance very well. And that was true of the first game, I think, as well. It's also heavily implied, by the way, that Indra is Ophelia from Axiom Verge 1, who is the one of the robots on the planet that you fight. So there you go.
Well, look at that, because I did not make that connection.
I didn't either, but there we go. Okay, I want to talk about the breach, because I thought that this is really cool. And aside, my gripes aside from kind of the NES style vibe about the breach, I thought the breach as a concept was very awesome. And to anyone that has not played Axiom Verge 2, the breach is basically like a separate world inside of Axiom Verge 2. It actually reminded me a lot of the Dark World from The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, or any of those games that kind of have that two world kind of gimmick to it, where like you can go to another world but it's slightly different. So essentially, when you go to the breach, you're playing as your drone, and you're kind of navigating, and the game gives you some really cool items in ways to manipulate the breach, because you start off having to go to designated portals, and there's only one way in, one way out, and then you get an item that kind of lets you go out of the breach wherever you want, but not into the breach. And then you get an item that lets you actually attract the portal to where you're standing, and then you just get the ability to, free flow and instantly switch throughout the breach. So I thought that this was like very cool. It led to like a lot of like great puzzles. It led to a lot of good exploration, kind of gave the game a little bit more legs in terms of completing the map, everything like that. So I really liked this gimmick. I do have a critique, which we'll get to in a second here, but yeah, I thought that this was like a very actually Zelda kind of mechanic to have in this game.
I thought it was really cool, and it was a nice extension of the drone ability, which I also think is really cool, and won me over a bit. So yeah, this is like, well, first of all, I'm very much looking forward to being able to go in and out of the breach whenever I want. That's going to be cool when I get to that point. But I think even like from the get-go, having that like additional like usage for the drone, besides just like being able to go into tight places in, the quote unquote real world or actual world, whatever, but then also having access to the breach, like gave that a lot more utility. And yeah, I mean, overall, I thought it was a nice, cool, like even like the boss battles in the breach, at least the one I did, was like a pretty nice little fun sub boss. The Robopede, I think it was called. And it kind of, it forced you to play a little bit different, because you don't have all of your tools with you. You have eventually you get like that and this is going more into the drone too, that cool grapple hook. That's hype. I love that. But yeah, I think that mechanic of like, okay, you gotta smartly navigate through the breach and then come out somewhere on the other side in the active world, and try to get somewhere so you can open up a place for Indra to get to. All of that, I think, really flowed together. Again, like one of the things this game does really well is integrating all these different systems together and making them work really like well in a fun manner and in a smooth manner. So this was another one of those extensions that was a lot of fun, and I was not sure how I'd feel about like, oh, like one of the big draws of this game is you get a drone, but it actually is like a lot more than it seems. And this was one of the ways they made it feel more than just like, okay, it's a different kind of morph ball or whatever.
Before we talk about the drone, do you have that item yet that lets you see like the breach in the real world? You press down.
Oh, I guess I don't know.
You know, okay. When you get that item, be on the lookout because there are certain rooms that you can press down on the button and it'll show you the breach, but you'll see blocks and it's a passcode, and if you input that passcode, you'll open up different parts of the map. I loved that mechanic. I thought it was so cool. And like I'm a total scrub because I was playing this game. I'm like 10 hours in, and finally I'm just like, man, what do all these arrows mean? Maybe I should try putting them in. And I did, and like lo and behold, it opened up. So I was like, oh my god, now I got to go back and like find every single area that has passcodes that I just skip past. So don't do what I did. Be on the lookout for that. Very cool. But yeah, let's talk about the drone. That was my complaint, is that I did like playing as the drone, but by the end of the game, I feel like half of the game you play as the drone, because as you power up your drone and you get more utility with its jumping, with its grappling, like I was basically just playing as the drone in the real world as well, because it's faster, it has the hook, it can do a lot more stuff. So like there was very little reason for me to play as Indra versus playing as the drone, which like was okay, but again, the combat and whatever is fairly limited for what you can do with the drone. Although you do actually get basically it's like a screw attack that once you grapple something and you launch yourself up, you start like screw attacking everything in your way. That's kind of cool, but it's not super useful in a battle where you're kind of facing something head on. But yeah, I guess I was a little bit surprised how much like you ended up playing as the drone in this game. You mentioned the morph ball earlier. It would be like playing a Metroid game where you're playing as the morph ball, let's say 70% of the game. It was a lot.
Really, that much? I feel like, I mean, maybe I haven't gotten to that point of the game. I feel like it's not that
maybe
much.
At least 50. How about that?
Maybe. It is very useful. I guess I just saw it as like a literal just extension of her character, and not like, all right, I'm not playing as Indra. Like I still feel like I'm playing as Indra, just in the same way that I feel like I'm still playing as Samus when I go into the morph ball. It's just I'm not in bipedal mode or whatever. But yeah, I guess I can, if the game was 50% morph ball, I guess that would change my opinion maybe. But I never felt like it was that much. But at the same time, you give me a grapple and I'll spend all my time grappling around. I have no problem with that. Maybe they could have paced out a bit better, but I personally like the drone because one thing I like it over the morph ball is that it doesn't take Indra with you. So like you can go somewhere and then I'm done. Provided you're able to in the circumstance, you can just warp right back. You don't have to go all the way back through as the drone and go back to her body. You just like wake up back as Indra or whatever. That I thought was great, because then you could use that drone and kind of send it out wherever you needed it to, and then use that and kind of puzzles wise, go back to Indra, move her around, get her through barriers, and then go back to the drone, etc. Stuff like that was, I thought, well executed and fun, because the drone again has that kind of limitation for you. You can't just outright fight stuff, so you have to use your hack, use your grapple, and all that, and makes you think a little bit. And there were even times I think when I was playing with a drone, I was just like trying to race away from stuff, like I'll just avoid this. And
that's pretty much what I mean.
Yeah.
Like when you go play the game, like the drone is faster, the drone has a better jump. So like, and combined with the fact that like, most of the big enemies or like the bosses, you can just not fight if you choose to. It's just kind of like, I think I'll just stay as the drone and just like jump over this dude and then just continue on my way.
I mean, I guess, but
and like I'm not complaining about the drone. I guess I'm just surprised like how much of the game you play as the drone.
Yeah, maybe I just haven't gotten to that part where I'm like, oh, all right, I get it. I'm the drone guy. Maybe it should have been a game about the drone and how they can become a CEO of a major company as their like upgrade, right? Like that might be an interesting game.
Well, maybe that's Axiom Verge 3. Who knows where this series is going? Let's talk about actually really quickly. I guess we should touch on too. This game has a skill tree, which I do not believe that Axiom Verge One has, and so that was kind of cool. I like being able to kind of pick and choose your upgrades. Although very quickly, not to keep beating on this dead horse, but like I found that I didn't care about upgrading combat at all. So I was upgrading my hacking abilities. I was upgrading my drone. Basically everything but combat. So I will say that the idea was cool, but I would have liked to see maybe a little bit more. I don't know, a little bit more option or a little bit more branches, I guess, on this tree. But I hope that it is here to stay because I do enjoy me a good skill tree.
I guess maybe just they should have maybe made the combat a bit more required and more of a necessity, so that way you would feel like you needed to upgrade your combat more. Because I get what you're saying, but at the same time, like when I was approaching combat, like I was upgrading some of my weapons, I guess, after I was upgrading my hack range and my health. Because I'm a masher and I'll take damage. Like I play tank class in a lot of games. Like I know I'm gonna get hit, so I always try to upgrade my health as much as possible, and my effective range, so I don't have to get too close if I don't need to. So that was like my personal thing. But then I could totally see people who would just max out their combat and be able, if they're just good enough, they're just gonna one shot everything and not get touched, so they don't have to worry about putting into health or hack range or rejuvenation of stuff or whatever it is. So I still think there was some freedom and like I guess a motivation or an incentive to utilize those different options rather than just kind of picking one or the other. Because yeah, you could avoid combat a lot of the times, but there are definitely times in this game where I could not avoid combat. Like I was getting hunted down and chased. At the very least, I had to get close and try to hack it to slow it down. At that point, I might as well fight the thing. So I feel like I didn't have that same sense of I can avoid everything so far, because there are times where both I couldn't, and also other times where I did want to fight the thing that was there, especially when I felt like I had the enough power ups, or I had gotten enough of those flasks or whatever they are. So I think there was some room for freedom, and it allowed you to play the game that you wanted to play and how you wanted to play it. And I played it a little differently, and I'm sure other people have played it a little differently based on their options. So I think that makes it a successful system.
Yeah, I hope it comes back. I really do.
Yeah.
I like I said, I love me a good skill tree, and I was loving me the world
Oh
of
yeah.
Axiom Verge, but very different again from Axiom Verge One, where like that felt very like alien, and this one feels a little bit more grounded in a world that like could be. I think it was like a little bit more realistic. Like you had like some outdoor area, like you had Lake Amagi, which I thought was a fantastic area, but particularly because, like you said, you can move through water freely, fairly quickly. But like I thought that all the areas were actually like really cool. There's the area in the lower map, Giguna, I think it's called. I'm looking up the names right now. That was a really spectacular area. Like just the Antarctica itself, the glacier.
Yeah.
It felt very cool to me, and like like I said, it kind of like it could be real, which I think was very important when you balance that against the very video gamey world of the Breach. So I really liked all the different areas in this game. I thought that even the names actually weren't as like outrageous as the first game, which I appreciated, and I'm sure you did as well. Everything kind of had that Metroid Prime, like something like the Anuna Gorge, or like Urum Valley, or like nothing was like a ridiculous name. So I thought that was cool. I liked the way that the map was constructed. Retroactively, actually, it's a lot like Metroid Dread, where like you have the box that highlights the general area, but then you have your individual topography inside of it. So I thought that was pretty neat. Although I would have liked a little bit more help, kind of trying to find out where all the last expansions and upgrades and stuff were. The game kind of points you in the right direction with the compass, but I feel like I just like having that kind of detailed on the map, particularly once you beat the game. Like I always go for 100% completion in these games, and this game doesn't really do a fantastic job of that. So that's my one critique about the map. But yeah, other than that, I think the world was very cool.
Before I give my comments on the world, what did you think about the compass and that being in the game?
I thought the compass kind of sucked, to be honest. Like it was supposed to point you to where like you were supposed to go, but I found myself never using it, and like I don't know. I wasn't like overly a compass fan. I don't know about you.
I would say it was not something I mean, I don't know if I was I mean, I'm a compass fan in general. I like compasses. I think it's a great invention.
Great if you're lost in the woods, yeah.
A technical marvel, if you will, an engineering marvel, something that I wouldn't have been able to come up with back in the day. So, not going to slander it or anything. I don't know if I'm a compass fan, but I will say that there were times when I've been playing where I didn't know what to do or where to go, or I just kind of glanced at it. I'm like, oh, okay, that's helpful info. Something like that, right? Like, not necessary, but it was supplemental. But I was curious how you felt about that. Now, the world, I will say, yes, the word you used was grounded. That I liked a lot because in Axiom Verge, it's like I feel like it's just so it was just too much at times. It was trying so much. There's so much happening. Every frame was so dense. There's so much going on and like some crazy designs and like some of them was like grotesque looking. I was like, like it goes into a really crazy like sci-fi world. Whereas this one, it does kind of get a little crazy-ish, I guess, at times, but it does feel a lot more grounded. Feels more like a real place, I guess. And I think that helped. I wish they kind of leaned into that more. I wish the story was like the characters were more aware of that and were this place is so similar to like, Antarctica is similar to this place I'm at, the glacier. You know what I'm saying? So like stuff like that. Like I feel like there was never that like kind of acknowledgement maybe, but aside from that, I did very much like how you had some really awesome natural environments, a massive mountain and the lake like you mentioned, like that was I loved the temple inside as you're exploring through like the depths of the lake. Very cool. Yeah, it felt like a real kind of place and that I appreciated, especially like when the game was already feeling in some ways that, very video gamey in ways.
Mm-hmm.
That
Yeah.
was a nice change of pace because the characters felt like for the most part real people. They didn't feel crazy extravagant or like too tropey or cliche to me, and the world didn't either. So I thought that was very welcome because I do remember from Axiom Verge there was just some. I mean, to be fair, very memorable and iconic almost in some ways, and like the visuals in the Axiom Verge. I mean, that like one shot with like the one boss or character, like that big head face thing, like the one I'm talking about.
So cool.
You
Oh
know what
yeah,
I'm
so
talking
cool.
about, yeah.
I think that's Ophelia actually, aka
Oh wow.
Indra
Okay.
from this
Well,
game, but I could be
look
wrong.
at that. But,
I could be
but
wrong.
like stuff like that is I don't know if this game has something like that. Like those that really just
Yeah, it does. It has another. Oh God, I
there's
can't
that one
remember the name. But
statue.
he's on the box art and he's at the bottom of the canyon.
Okay, maybe I know there was that one Lamasa statue. I'm like, oh, this is kind of that thing again they're trying to do, but I don't know. Yeah, I like the world though. I thought the map flowed pretty well. There were times where like I feel like I was just crossing over to other areas without even noticing at times, and they kind of just meshed together in a way. It didn't feel like they were separated so harshly, like in other Metroidvanias. I don't know. I thought it was well executed.
Yep, I thought that it was too. No really big complaints from me about the world. I will say that I do have something that I think you're going to disagree with, and frankly, I think everybody's going to disagree with me. But I wasn't in love with the music of this game, like at all, actually. Um, and I was surprised because I thought that the
Really?
music of Axiom Verge 1 was awesome. And actually, I think that the theme that plays in the lake is awesome in this game. But like, there was a track in Axiom Verge 1. I think it was in the Ku area where like it had the I don't know, the Duminal is out there somewhere. He knows a technical term for this, but like kind of like the Arabic style voice, like vocals
Yeah.
that played during that, and that was great in that one track in that game. Whereas in Axiom Verge 2, I feel like every area has that, like almost every area, and to me, it was too much of a good thing. I think that you could have had like just a little bit less of that, and maybe a little bit more I don't know. I don't want to say distinctive, because I think that the music of the areas is distinctive, but then when you have that same kind of vocal presentation, it to me it kind of like melded them together a little bit, I guess, for lack of a better word. So I've seen people like universally praise the music, and I guess there's just something wrong with me, but like I wasn't I wasn't as in love with it as everyone else was. And I think it also stems back to like the very first song that you hear is like this really upbeat video gamey kind of a thing. And like for me, when my expectation and this is probably my own fault, but when I'm just like, yeah, this is like a quasi Metroid game, and like Metroid has that brooding dark theme that we know opens up all the games, and you've got this theme and it's like diddle diddle diddle, it is like, okay, well,
bro,
I
that's
guess
what
we're doing
Metroid
here.
Dread sounds like, and you like that. It's literally what Dread sounds like.
No,
Bro, it's
Dread is
Dread
like
all
tense.
the
It's
way.
like,
That is Dread all the way.
don't make me do the
That
Metroid
is
Dread
Dread
thing here.
all.
What do you think of the music?
I think I agree and disagree. On one hand, I definitely remember areas that don't have those vocals, so I won't say every area has them, but like the first, I definitely remember like the first music I think I heard, even on like the glacier area. Still, it sounded like a Mario like desert level. Like it just it felt so video gamey and whatnot. I was like, okay, this is weird. Like it didn't feel like it fit the aesthetic whatsoever. But then like you get a little further, I want to say it was around that same area, and then like it was kind of more of a vibey kind of like lo-fi beat, like almost not lo-fi, but like it had that kind of like instrumental beat to it. It kind of had like a Fendrana drifts or a Fendrana like depths, kind of feel to it, where it kind of built on like the snowy theme and had a little bit of a bop to it. Like that I really liked. And then you got to like the vocal area, I thought that was good. And then, like there was another song nearby that like the first vocal track you get, I think in the mountain area, and that was kind of, I was like on it. It was inconsistent at times. It does feel very video gamey and chiptune-y, and I thought the vocals were good. I thought they were. Maybe I haven't gotten to the point in the game where they're overused, but I thought they were pretty used reasonably in the game so far, and were a welcome addition. Other times it's video gamey. Other times I think they hit that, or the game hits that balance of a good like I don't know, not ambient, but a nice background track, but also has that like Metroid-y like electronic kind of beat in the back that kind of keeps you moving forward at times. So I don't know. I've liked the music so far. I wouldn't say there's a super standout track, though. I can hear that one track in the mountain area with the vocals, and I like that track, but I can hear that in my head. I don't know if it's because it's memorable because I enjoy it or because I heard the vocals so much that's burned into my head now.
I think that's like
so,
the worst. That's the worst one.
I don't know.
I think that the track that plays in the lake is like the best.
Yeah,
track.
yeah,
and
that one's really
I guess
good.
To the game's credit, I can hum that one like off the top of my head. So yeah, I don't dislike the music, but it wasn't. I just saw like people everywhere being like, "Oh man, this is awesome!" Like, and it just I think I prefer the music of the first game, which I guess goes back to my point that I was making at the top of the show, just kind of to wrap things up here and in conclusion, where like I like a lot of the things that the second game does. I respect the game for being different, but I like the first game more. Like I like what that game did more. I like the alien world more. I like the combat more. I like kind of the more straightforward story a little bit more. I think that I don't know. Maybe I just had like the wrong set of expectations for this game, because we were told like this is going to be a different game than Axiom Verge 1, and it certainly was. And so like I don't know if it's just that I was like such a big fan of the first one that I couldn't reconcile that, but I do like this game, but I don't like it as much. And to kind of bring it all home, like what I was talking about at the beginning of the show, I think that I would say it's probably not as good in almost every metric to me. But I would still certainly recommend it to, Metroid fans, anyone looking for just a solid Metroidvania or a solid video game to play.
Yeah, this is again a game that I started playing. I was like, this is making me like enjoy that Metroidvania, thing again. I don't know. I felt like I was maybe just not enjoying the genre as much as I used to. But like when I started playing this game again, I was like, oh yeah, this is hitting the spot. This is the Metroidvania that I'm looking for, and I think it does really well. Like it feels like a Metroid game. It really does. And it came in with like a really cool setting and set up to a story that I've enjoyed. I think the gameplay feels very, gives you a lot of creativity, opportunity for creativity and freedom. It doesn't just feel like, all right, I'm spamming guns at enemies until they die, I guess. Some of my favorite Metroidvanias have more of that melee kind of combat to it. So I like that this game that has that similar kind of stuff. I like the skill tree. The graphics are awesome. I think the music's pretty solid overall. Yeah, I mean, this is a game that I am surprised that I'm enjoying it as much because unlike you, I wasn't like anticipating the game very hard. I thought Axiom Verge was cool, and I was like, all right, whenever this game comes out, it comes out. And I feel like I'm enjoying it more than the first game, and I don't feel like I like really ever was like, oh, I got to continue playing Axiom Verge. I kind of just played the game and I finished it. This game, and like, well, I would pick it back up again to like continue playing it, but I was like, oh, I can't wait to keep playing it more. Not to like kick on the game's credit or anything. Axiom Verge is still a very very good game, and I enjoyed it a lot. But this game, I finished playing it. And I was like, damn, I wish I had more time before the show to keep playing more of it, and I can't wait to play more of it later in the week because I'm enjoying it a lot, and I want to see where the story goes, where the game takes me. So I would definitely recommend it as well. I just wish it was on Steam and not the stupid Epic Games Store. But whatever. We got to make sacrifices, got to make compromises these days.
I want to say that Tom Happ tweeted out that he had an exclusivity deal with Epic Game for maybe like a year, something like that.
Hey, get that bag, man. I'm not mad about it. I bought it on Epic Store. It is what it is.
By the way, speaking of, if anybody wants like the collector's edition of this game, it is absolutely legit. There's like action figures, there's maps, there's CDs. It's one of the coolest collector editions that I've seen in like a long time. And I think that pre-orders are still open for limited run games if you're into that kind of thing. But yeah, this was like a badass collector edition. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's not funny. I would have thought going into this that I would have been kind of championing Axiom Verge 2, and you would have been just kind of like, eh. And I wouldn't say the roles are quite reversed, because I do really like Axiom Verge 2, but maybe, as not to beat a dead horse, just not as much as the first one. Funny how that works.
That's what I don't know. I don't even know where I was going with that. That's what makes it, I think, a successful game. Because you get some differing opinions and different reasons why you like it. And who knows? Maybe it'll win you over time. Maybe you'll go back to it and appreciate it.
Yeah, I don't think it needs to win me over.
It does. It needs to win you over, Andy. That's important. That it wins you over. No, I don't know. We'll see.
I hope that we're playing Axiom Verge 3 in a sooner time frame than we were Axiom Verge 2 from Axiom Verge 1. That was like 6 years. Which I guess, like, to be fair, that's one guy making it, so of course that's going to be a long time. But man, can we give this guy? Can we give Tom Happ a second pair of hands here to help him with some of this stuff so we can get?
Yeah, did he make this game himself again? The whole thing?
I think so.
Because during the show,
I mean, obviously, like some other people chipped in certain areas, but
he needs to just hire a whole team. Somehow, I don't know how game development works. I'm sure. It's very expensive to hire people. I'm sure if you don't have the resources to do so and like whatnot. But yeah, we need this guy to get it. We need him a team, a studio, or something. I don't know.
Yeah, you know what? And for anybody because I don't know when we'll talk about Axiom Verge again. Anybody out there that has not seen the IGN documentary, The Making of Axiom Verge, do yourself a solid and check this out. Because Tom Happ, the creator of Axiom Verge, is like an incredible dude, and his story is something else. Like, he has a special needs son. He has this really contract gone awry with a video game publisher who basically kind of tried to swindle him. It's an incredible story, so I would encourage anybody to go and check that out. And I would also encourage everybody, if you're listening to this, to head on over to Twitter. We asked a couple days ago now What is the next area that we should cover for Mapping Metroid? We're taking fan requests, and I think right now the two front runners are both from Metroid Prime 3. We've got Skytown and we've got Brio kind of competing for the next Mapping Metroid. So let us know which one you'd rather see, because I'm down for either of those.
Anything from a Metroid Prime game, I'm totally down for. So yes.
Well, we hope that you guys were down with this episode. Check out Axiom Verge 2. It's on Epic Games. It's on Switch, and I think it's on PS4, PS5. I could be wrong. But, it's on Switch and your PC. That's all you need to know. Go check it out. It's a really fun game, good time, and a super solid entry into the growing Inspired by Metroid catalog we've got here. We are going to get out of here. It's pushing midnight for Dak, and my dog, as you've been able to hear this whole episode, is going nuts upstairs, so we're going to go to bed. But we want to encourage you guys to check us out over on Twitter, at Spateri316, at DakCity_, and of course, at Omega Metroid Pod. And check us out wherever you get your podcasts. You know the drill. Like and subscribe. We will see you guys back here next week with hopefully some Metroid news from the Game Awards. Until then.